one of our clients who works in e-commerce has a large group of developers, and they have one team that's fully responsible for the shopping cart. That's one simple, really important piece of the e-commerce side. They have 20 developers only working on that shopping cart. I can imagine that developers might find it sometimes boring to find such a limited scope of the work. How do you see that in durable teams? And is that something that is different with initiative and based teams and durable teams? How do you see that?
I mean, usually the area is when we're talking about durable teams or teams operating in product mode, the area that they are responsible for is broad enough. It's, rather, I mean, you gave the example of shopping cart. I would say, shopping cart is probably far if I were modeling it, I would call it, I will give them more responsibility and say it's maybe, I don't know, it's the conversion journey, or, or maybe it's part of the order management team. Because when we're talking about product mode teams or durable teams, it's not the same as feature teams. Because feature teams are much narrower in scope. They focus on one feature at a time. But these teams, durable teams, it only makes sense even from a business point of view to fund a team like this for multiple years if they are responsible for a big enough area in which you can expect that there will be some or the other demand for functionality all the time. Otherwise, it gets too narrow, and you have to keep shuffling people between teams.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I like the fact how you link it to a business outcome. They're responsible for the conversion instead of the shopping cart, and of course, it's the shopping cart in the end, but it gives them a bigger responsibility and bigger thing to work on. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's also you've got to look at it as it's the same. It's like when you have a car, if you replace all the parts in the car, is it still the same car? Same scenario here. That you've got a team that's responsible for your shopping cart. When do you think that this team is not the same? Is not the same team that it was 6 months ago when all the members have changed? It's quite rare that you replace everybody in the team in one go. You have one person leaving, another one coming in, another person leaving, another one coming in. So really, if you don't look at a team as individual members, but you rather look at it as an object, for lack of a better term, you could have, I don't know, it becomes you could have durable teams with members that move in and out, sort of thing.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And Frank, how much, if you have different clients, so it's different experiences, I'm sure, and different setups, but in general speaking, how much autonomy do you provide to development teams? Would you prefer setting up them with a supervisor, or are they really autonomous, etc.?
Well, it depends on the maturity of the team. It depends on what they're working on. Ideally, what you'd want is, of course, a fully autonomous team with a clear goal and a clear purpose that is able to independently make decisions to achieve that goal. But sometimes that's not viable, either due to maturity or lack of expertise, or things surrounding the team that inhibits them in some way, and then you might need a little bit more guidance there. But ideally, I prefer having fully autonomous teams, as autonomous as is responsible.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And Remy, how do you see this? Who decides technology? Which technology to use? Is that centralized as in you, or?
No. Yeah, I agree. I think it depends on the maturity. We are right in the middle of that journey of trying to make our 3 squads more independent from each other, because we were very small before. We only had one team, and therefore everybody was involved everywhere. It's very difficult to move. Well, it's very difficult. It's a long journey to move to competing independent team. If you've been in a model before where you didn't have that. I think choosing technologies is it's a challenging one, because you also don't want to end up with a zoo where you have, one team coding in, I don't know, in JavaScript and the other one coding in Go, and then those two systems need to interact somehow, and then you indeed can't move people around because one person might not know Go and the other one might not know JavaScript, and then people really get siloed into their own thing. So I think you need to. My personal opinion is there needs to be somewhat a layer on top that brings some sort of harmony across all the teams, that makes maybe the larger decisions, and then you get the teams to make smaller decisions, or things that might not impact the wider organization. But
it's a mix, right?
Yeah, it's a mix. If you let all teams decide everything themselves, you end up with something that's unmaintainable.
I think also it's like that's where the maturity comes in as well, because I think that especially a team that's very autonomous is also business aware. So it is aware that, we could go, the whole company is using JavaScript or Java, and we could go for this entirely different technology, but the benefits don't weigh up against the cost, or and they should be able to make a smart decision there without somebody telling them that they can't do that. And they should be able to make a good case for using the technology if it does weigh up to, going away from the standard.
Yeah.
So Sriyaman, the question from Daniel here. If you have a large number of product teams, durable teams that are empowered, autonomous, how would you run then a large initiative projects that span multiple products? He gives an example that runs across 10 products for an extended time.
Right. Well, to some extent, this is not different from even without product teams. How would you do it, right? If you're talking about 10 product teams, even otherwise, you would need in the classic model, you would need a program, and you would need a program organization, and you would need several individual teams, right? And you would coordinate the work between those teams. So here, what would happen is, instead of it's a little bit instead of doing all that coordination at runtime, what you would do is you would get into a solutioning phase where you kind of say, okay, this is the cross-cutting initiative that we are going to work on, and broadly this is the shape of the solution, and you basically say, okay, you carve it out into pieces and say, okay, this part is the responsibility of team A, and this part is the responsibility of team B, etc. And basically those items, so if at that level, if you're talking about epics, features, and stories, right, then for a cross-cutting initiative like this, you at the level of epics, you say, okay, these epics belong to team A and these epics belong to team B, etc. And draw out the dependencies, who needs to get done first before the other team can begin. And at that point, those things just become additional items onto their individual roadmaps, right? With a common understanding of the priorities, right? So for cross-cutting initiatives, I recommend that in addition to the individual product owners on the individual squads, or whatever you want to call those teams, there needs to be a solution owner who has the end-to-end perspective of the solution, but who can then coordinate with the individual product owners. But that's a little bit of a lightweight coordination, just to ensure that everybody has the same idea of prioritization and dependencies and so on. And if you have to make any on-the-spot calls regarding the scope of the solution, okay, we thought we are going to deliver this level of solution by this date, but now there are some unforeseen circumstances, so we have to maybe deliver a slightly lower level of solution. To make those kind of calls, it's useful to have a cross-cutting solution owner in such cases.